Hey guys, and welcome to episode 109. That's right. We are just pushing along almost to 110, and I'm really excited. As always, I remain PJ, and in this episode, 6 titles, 2 brothers, 1 night. It's last night games, and with me is Nathan Jenne. Nathan, how are you? Thanks. Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. And I know you're in a conference room at the office, so you know, but we'll try to be mindful of the time. So I was doing a little research. I had reached out. Well, I guess I should say first, I reached out to you and your brother Jake um, at I think it was Gen Con a year ago, and then again, I think I saw you at Origins, or maybe I saw you at Gen Con. All the conventions blur together, I feel like, right? It's just like I want to work with you guys. So you sent me a few games, and we love your products. We love your concept. You've got this amazing story that I want to dive into as well. But I was so why don't you tell us a little bit about you personally? Um, how did you get into the hobby? Like, what was the first modern board game for you, and a little bit like that? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. We've been asked that question before, and I've tried to
yeah.
think like what was the first game. So my Jake and I, we grew up in a family. Our family was kind of always had board games, and we had a bunch of the old ones.
Hmm.
Um, we had Scrabble and Monopoly, and then we had, I don't know. I think my parents must have been into it a little bit because we our collection kind of grew over time, and we'd get like new things like skip over phase 10 and stuff, and we had some old interesting ones. I don't know if you ever remember, there's an old dungeon game where you had little purple minifigs that you'd move around the dungeon.
So that
And
kind
there's
of sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was an old one. That one was like kind of like tickling something, I think, in both of our minds.
Yeah.
And then we had this fun game called Careers, which was a little more like Ameritrash, but maybe with a little bit more choice in some of the games. Anyway,
Okay.
we just kept growing, and we went to college, and people had introduced us to even new games like Dominion and such. And then, yeah, I think actually Carcassonne was one of the. I mean, if we're going to talk about what people classically call their intro
Right.
games, I think my wife and I bought Carcassonne and started playing it, enjoyed it a lot.
That's cool. So,
Hmm.
and I think that's the cool thing. I don't know that everyone knows this about. It's like you and your brother. You grew up in the hobby. I
Yeah,
think you decided to go into business together and open up a publishing house, and
yeah,
you're
yeah,
publishing games. Like,
yeah.
so I really want to dive into that because I'm interested in what it's like to work with your brother. So, like, I work with my wife, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, in my job, of course, she's my boss. You guys are probably partners, equals.
Jake's the
Um,
boss.
oh, Jake's the boss. Okay, so what is that like? How do you manage? When disagreements and leave things at home. Not bringing them to work. Like, how does that dynamic play out in day to day?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So we had like 20 years of practice arguing and fighting. So
Sure.
and then once we became adults, we put that behind us. No, so yeah, I think so. I'm actually the older brother. I'm 3 years older than Jake, and
Okay.
he's the so obviously he's the smarter one. I'm the better looking one. Um,
Oh, the truth comes out.
so yeah, we got along, I think, fairly well. Although I'm not sure he would say that growing up. And yeah, interestingly enough, through a bunch of interesting events, we ended up starting college the same year. And we decided we'd be dorm roommates for that first year. And I think my parents were worried that we were going to kill each other.
Sure.
Um, but I don't know, I guess both of us just kind of grew up at that moment, and we just kind of saw each other peers and equals. And since then, I think, most of that sibling rivalry has died died down.
Right.
Um, but And we were always making up games, growing up and stuff. Nothing complex or crazy, but we'd invent little games, because we were bored and we grew up before most electronics and things.
Sure.
So we had like indoor baseball where we would like roll up socks and roll up towels and smash them across our room and dive onto the bed. And, we'd do some outdoor games and stuff. So we had always been like kind of creative, and we had the games. I'm growing up, and, I guess it's been close to 10 years ago. I guess Jake was just like, we should make a game. Like, let's make a real board game. We love board games. There's cool board games out there. We should make a game. And I think that's when we got more serious about it, and we sat down and actually started like thinking what it would be like and where it would go. And I don't know, it took us probably 6 or 7 years of just messing things up and scrapping ideas and throwing things away before we really kind of got it enough together that we could start publishing them.
Right. And your first title was Life of a Chameleon, right? Is that right?
That is
so
correct. Yeah.
How many so okay, so I have so many questions.
Sure.
Okay, so how many drafts or iterations of that game before you came up with the final product?
I don't know. I was reading a blog by another designer a while ago, and I forget his name. Sorry, I can't credit
No, it's okay.
This person, but they were talking about, once they hit like 280 or something revisions, then they were like getting confident that it was a good game.
Right.
That person must do a really good job at tracking what they're doing. I don't think we track necessarily or maybe formally recognize what's a revision. And, going back to your earlier question about how we make board games, honestly, I think the fact that we're brothers and that we've known each other for so long, we can be super honest and open about what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. And I think we're constantly telling each other like, no, that doesn't work because of this. And instead of being like ego hits, I think it's a little more like, oh no, you're right. Like there's something wrong here and we need to work on it. So a lot of iterations to answer the question. And, I can't imagine at this point designing games without Jake. I think that pushback that he gives me helps us iterate a little faster than maybe I would ever be able to do by my own. Like I would just be spiraling off in like, La La Land. And he's like, no, this is a dumb idea. And then, we'll start working on something and I'm like, no, that's not working. And honestly, it's hard to, I think for me to attribute credit back and forth, like,
oh, sure.
Who did what? I will say Jake came up with the initial idea for Life of Chameleon. One of the thoughts he had initially is like, and especially those like older American games where you'd pick your color and then march around the board. He was interested in that concept of your character, your pawn having a color, and he's like, well, it'd be fun if that changed colors throughout the game.
Yeah.
And that's what got us going on like, oh, well, we started thinking about like, well, why would you change color? What's the theme?
Nice.
And we came to Chameleons.
Cool. So Jake's got this idea of it would be cool to change color. You go through the process. Now you're ready. You were ready to go. And this might be a which came first, the chicken or the egg question. I don't know. Your answer will reveal whether that is or not. So you're ready to go and you decide. Now you've got a question. Do you open your own publishing house and publish it yourself? Or do you go with a traditional publisher and you went with the former? Or did you decide we're going to create Last Night Games and then publish? Or how did that evolve?
So I'll let you know a little secret. We had a failed Kickstarter like a long time ago in like 2016 or something.
Okay.
With even an earlier title than the one that we haven't Yeah, actually published. We had known, I don't know, we had gone down that route,
Mm-hmm.
and run into failure, like so many people do.
Yep.
And my brother actually has, from his job, a lot of experience with like manufacturing and sourcing and
Mm-hmm.
such.
Okay.
And we just were so new to like the industry. I mean, we'd played games for a long time, but we hadn't been around the industry. We didn't know about like all the great resources, unpubs and designer groups and different things, and we didn't know how to do anything. And I think it was Jake. He was just like, "Look, I know how to do this. Like we can do this. I've got experience in it." And I'm like, "Oh well, I don't know." And and then it was just like, "Can we afford to do it?" And like, I don't know. And so I'm the super conservative one, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just dragging my feet, and I don't know, and mulling it over. And then I remember it was like 2021, like shortly before I think Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Jake's like, he's like, "I did it."
I
I'm like,
did it.
"You did what?" He's like, "I sent our game to print."
Wow.
So that's he pushed us forward, and I'm so thankful for it, because
Right.
I'd still be dragging my feet like all these years later.
And that's kind of the model. Like I was I was looking in through your website in preparation for this episode, and every game that the two of you designed them all. So
Far.
yeah. So is it because there's nothing that's coming? Because I'm guessing as a publisher, designers are just constantly pitching you with games. Has nothing come across your desk that's been like, yes, we need to publish this? Or is it a design choice that it's just the two of you? Or like
Well,
what's a yeah.
I think that's the first time I've been asked that question. That's a
Okay.
really interesting question. I think in some ways we're just not at a level where we're confident that we would serve the designer as well as we
Mm,
should, if that makes sense.
okay.
We're still just a few years into it, and they're still growing. We're still learning and making mistakes. Um, there's some really great designers out there, and we do get a lot of
Yeah.
people reaching out to us for pitches and stuff. And I feel really bad saying like, no. I mean, we really haven't even just entertained the idea at all yet, and I think it's something we've talked about on occasion. We also, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately for us, have like a ton of ideas that we're still also working on ourselves.
Okay.
I mean, there's a little bit of selfish aspect, I think, in it. We have, we have several more games that we've started working on, and some that are coming down the pipeline and are doing. I'm not going to say that we're not ever going to do that, but it's I think it's a responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you take on someone, you want to give them the best showing that you can, and
Right.
I think we're still like growing and maybe not putting our image out there. I mean, we'll have people come up to us at conventions and be like, "I've never heard of you guys. Like, why you've got all these games? Like,
Right.
what's going on?" And I'm like, I think that's like indicating to me that maybe we're not we're missing a little on the promotion side of
Mm.
things, and yeah, maybe we'll get there, and we'll feel more confident. And
Yeah. That's really, so for me personally, that's interesting to hear because at least amongst the members of the hobby and the community that I spend most of my time with, I communicate with, everyone's heard of you.
oh,
And
yay,
Panda Royale,
oh,
right? That
it's going
game just,
well.
it was wildfire, and everyone was like, "Oh, are you gonna have Nathan and Jake on?" And I'm like, "Well, we're trying to work something out." People were really
Yeah.
excited about that, and so yeah, I guess I'm kind of surprised that people don't know you. Listen, if you're watching, Last Night Games, man. They rock. They've got some great
Yay.
titles, and you got to check them out. Um,
Thank you.
no, it's
Thank you.
the games, and not because you've sent me a game or two, and I'm like, oh no, they were genuinely incredible. You
Oh,
guys,
thank you.
every interaction I've had with you and your brother have always been delightful. So
Oh, thank you.
you don't actually. It's not just that y'all put out good games. Y'all are good people, right?
Oh, thanks.
And
Thank
just
you.
so yeah. So I'm really surprised to hear that because like
Yeah.
in my circle, people know who you are.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's we've I think we're how do I say this? So I think we're kind of targeting a different level of the audience than a lot of companies are targeting.
okay.
I know a lot of designers really like to go heavy and deep and make these really deep and wonderful games.
Hmm.
Um, we're kind of like I don't know, like riding the line or straddling the fence. Maybe we're trying to make these games that have enough strategy to keep uh, hobby people entertained,
Hmm.
but be easy enough for like mainstream people to pick up and play. If
Sure.
that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I hear
And
that a
so
lot.
and so I think when we're at shows and conventions, which are dominated by deep hobbyists,
Sure.
I think we get a lot of pass-bys because, they're looking for like Wormspan or something, a lot bigger, a lot deeper and heavier. We get mistaken for kids games a lot. Like, oh, you make kids games. And, I'll admit some of our art looks just really fun and young. But it's an interesting space, I think. And I don't know, we've been navigating as best we can, right? Like, we aren't the kids games, but and sometimes people equate family games with kids games.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
and so like I don't know, we've had a lot of discussion, like, how do we state that we're like we have some strategy. It's not the deepest strategy you'll ever play, but it's not for kids. It'll keep you entertained, but your friends can learn it.
Right.
So we have a lot of like heavier gamers taking our games to their friends that don't play games. And
Yep.
yeah, we've had a lot of friends like just I get pictures of like family gatherings with them all around the table playing Panda Royale or all around the table playing horticulture. Just um, they were able to teach everybody the game
Yeah.
because it was easy, it was a fast play, but there's enough strategy that it's not just boring, right? It's not,
Right.
oh, move to the blue square, move to the red square.
That is definitely the conversation I think we hear the most in the gaming community is how do we get our family who aren't hobbyists into the
Yeah,
hobby, or how do I connect with my grandfather, or how do I connect with my neighbors or people who aren't gamers.
yeah.
And I think one of the things that struck me um, for a moment, if we can talk about Finest Fish.
Hmm.
Um, so my wife saw it and was like, we need a copy, right? And so we got a copy, and you sent it to us, and that game is incredibly like crunchy, right? Like the hobbyists like to say, right? It's very crunchy. The,
Oh,
the
thanks.
strategy is incredibly deep. We did an episode with Nick Bentley from Underdog Games where we talked about emergent qualities in games, where if you play a game more and more strategies become evident, and there's not just one way to victory, and then you're done, you shelf the game. I thought, in my experience with Finest Fish, there's I definitely see those emergent qualities playing at two players all the way up to four. It's like there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways of manipulating. There's different strategies for that. Tell us a little bit about the development of Finest Fish.
Oh, yeah. So, I think I've said this before on an interview, but we had originally started with an idea, and again, Jake always seems to come up with the really good ideas. Jake
Okay.
came up with this idea. He was like, it'd be fun to like build the feathers onto a peacock and make a really fancy peacock.
Okay.
And we started it that way. So I'm very fortunate. I have an industrial laser cutter, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Laguna Tools 100-watt CO2 laser, which cuts wood beautifully, makes beautiful little bits. So Jake's like, I need you to cut some pieces. And so I started cutting out like these feather shapes, and we paint them, and then we start like playing around with them. He's like, this would be cool. And like you were saying earlier, like we like to have we always like to incorporate like multiple paths to victory, or at least multiple ways to score points. And so right out of the gate, we were like, okay, like obviously groups of the same color style are gonna, work together. And then, we could have like objectives that you're trying to accomplish throughout that. And
Sure.
so we started playing with it. And so you're familiar with the finest fish. The black scales are the special scales. They don't show up in the patterns, but they give you a bonus point no matter where they're at. You can also double dip and score them in groups if you get a big group of them. And so those were originally these like red feathers, and we had dropped that in there, like, okay, these red ones can be this bonus point. And we had these like funny looking little peacock heads, and then we were building the feathers onto it. And it we were getting into it. We'd figured out like the grouping, and we're like, yeah, these patterns, and we were trying to figure out the patterns and stuff, but like we could tell something was there, and we kept working on it and developing it forward. And we figured out the patterns. We're like, okay, the patterns, we want them, not to be necessarily easy to make patterns and groups of the same color at the same time. Like we want them semi, like a little bit orthogonal, right? But not impossible if you're paying attention to what you're doing. And so like it was all like working really well, but we had a hard time like where did we end this? Like there didn't feel like there's any like natural end to it. Also, we were starting to consider like manufacturing and bits and things, and like the bits like that we had originally were like the scales were like, or the scales, they were feathers, but they were like this big, right? And that's huge. And we were like, how many are we going to need? And
sure.
Honestly, the price was the biggest barrier in this game by a long shot. People look at it and they're like, oh, it's a simple game. But what you don't realize is there's 180 scales.
Yes.
And half of them are painted on both sides. So I mean it's an incredible. Anyway, so we were going, and Jake also had this like competing idea. He's like, oh, we did Chameleon. Those are like the traditional like rainbow colors and stuff. I want something in like a nicer palette and stuff. And so that's when we knew we'd have to like paint on them to make sure that everyone could distinguish each color from the other color. And so we were just kind of plagued by like, how do we end this game, and what's the manufacturing cost of this game? And I'm gonna take credit for this idea. I was like,
okay,
because I was doing the the cut files for the laser and stuff. And
sure.
Like, what if I just make these circles? Because they were a little bit elongated before, like more like a feather. And I was like, what if I just make them circles? And then I was like, wait, these look like scales, like fish scales. And so at that moment, like I took it to Jake. I'm like, Jake, what about if we go? What if we do fish? He's like, I think that's a good idea. I'm like, and look, we can go out like this, and then we close it off. And then when someone fills in the whole fish, game's over. And yeah. And so we're like, we quick pivoted. I cut out these new fish boards. Originally, so the peacocks were not a double layered board. They were just a single layer, and you're just building out on the table.
Right.
And so here we're like, okay, what can we do a 2-layer board? And so we did these 2-layer fish, and then we were stacking the scales on, and we're like, it feels great, and like the component size came down. It looked like it was easier to fit in the box. And, working with our factory, the pricing was looking like it was coming down. Everyone we were playtesting it with was like, oh, this is great. I used to have, and everyone wants to come up and tell us, I used to have a goldfish when I was, and so I felt like it was a win all around. It was like, it was like people were like super relating to it. It had natural closure. We did a little research into like fish keeping and different things like that. And we found that, there is goldfish keeping out there. There's, and I know we're not true to like reality, but like
Oh,
there is
sure.
calico patterning on fish that is valuable. And so we're like, oh, perfect. We'll make these black scales that match like this calico pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It's prized, there'll be the bonus points. So it just kind of, went from there. And it just like, picked up steam with everyone we were taking it to. And we're like, yeah, this is going to be fun. Like, let's do it. And then, at the end of the day, it still came in a bit of a heavy hitter on the price, which, I don't know. We were just like, I don't know. I mean, we would have loved to make it a 5 or 6 player game.
Yeah.
But we're just like, at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, factories, it's like, it's looking like a $50 price point. And we're like, oh, they're like, hi, but it was,
Right.
I don't know. I think it was worth it. I think, I don't know. A lot of people have enjoyed it. So.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it
present
was
company included. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was it was a fun development, but yeah, like that's the whole story of it, I think.
So it's 2021. Jake has sent Chameleon, Life of Chameleon to print. Last Night Games that's the birth, right?
Yeah.
You're 6 titles in. Do you have a favorite amongst your titles?
I get that. I get asked that a lot. And
okay,
my first response is they're all my children.
Sure.
The true response is whatever we're working on right now is my favorite.
Sure. Okay.
Because I think when we're like in the development, I think we both really enjoy the design part, but I know I do. And so when I'm designing and I'm in the middle of it, I'm just like, oh, this is fun. I love this game and I love it so much. And then by the time it like hits the streets, you're like, I have played that game so many times.
Right.
You're like,
right.
Let's play some. Let's play a new game. It's not that I don't enjoy my games. I do enjoy my games for sure.
Of course.
But I also love like learning and playing new games. So
right.
Usually when given the choice, I'm like, let's play this new game.
So what was your first board game convention after establishing Last Night Games? And when was that? Do you remember?
So our very first convention was a local one called SaltCon.
Okay.
It's in Salt Lake City. And we were the saddest couple of guys, I think. we had Life of a Chameleon. We were, going to print with The Finest Fish. I don't even think we had a full booth. I think we were at like a long table, and we're like, hey, we're new guys and we have this game. And it was it was kind of a crazy time and crazy thing. But we actually ran I had cut out little like pins that people could put on their lanyards, and they were chameleons. And we had bought a bunch of those like paint markers, and we're like having people sit down at our table and paint little chameleons, like, because that's Life of a Chameleon and,
right.
Color changing chameleons. And so people were making these like amazing pins. And I think in some respects, people didn't even know that we had a game. They're like, oh, this is the fun pin booth.
That happens to sell a board game.
I mean, as much as I joke about it, I do think it drew people over to the booth. And we ran that same painting thing again at Origins, again at PAX, and people really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to keep doing that paint your own pin thing. We've just, with all the games we have, there's not enough space anymore to have another
so you need
table.
a bigger booth now.
We need to move on to the big booths.
That's right.
60 by 60s.
So have either of you attended, and if not, have plans to attend UKGE in the future? Because I know if Gareth were here, he would ask that question.
I absolutely have a desire. I have a desire to go to all the places.
Sure.
I think they're also fun. No, we haven't yet. So we've been working with other partners, and I don't think I can make any announcements yet, but we've got some partners working with us to internationalize some of our games. Um, and I think I don't even know what the time frame is. Hopefully, maybe later this year we'll start seeing some of our games at some of those conventions. We won't be running booths or anything just yet, and I think that's just something we got to figure out. Like with the internationalization partners, it might
Right.
make most sense that just they do it, which would be great. I would love to just go as an attendees and
Sure.
and then I mean, working a booth is fun, but I go to so many shows
No,
where I like
absolutely.
just it's like Jake and I and sometimes our wives come and it's just like nonstop working the
Right.
booth and not many gameplays.
Well, we have quite the following in the UK.
Yes.
And there is a vibrant and rich and very close knit community of board game hobbyists in the
Mhm.
UK. So,
Yeah,
and I know UKG is the one they all go to. So, guys, if you're watching,
I know.
y'all need to reach out and help Nathan and Jake come to England, spend a week in Birmingham,
Yeah.
and okay, because
As we
yeah,
grow, we're definitely going to be at more of these events and these
sure,
places, right? Right now, we're a little focused close at home,
right.
and but
So,
things are growing.
what about your convention schedule for this year, 2025? I know it's still early, but
Yeah,
everyone's thinking about. I mean, everyone's asking me. I get messages all the time. Are you going to be at Gen Con? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there.
yeah, yeah.
Have y'all finalized your convention schedule yet?
Yeah, I think for this year, it's going to be pretty much the same as last year. This one isn't so important to maybe all the listeners, but Jake will be at Gamma Expo at the end of
Okay.
February, and then I'll be I think then it overlaps a little bit with our local SaltCon, so we'll be at SaltCon for the last couple days of it. I think at very minimum I'll be at Origins, and then we should both be at Gen Con and then PAX Unplugged.
PAX
I think
Unplugged.
that's
Okay.
our schedule this year. We do
So if
send
you're,
copies of games to play to wins and libraries
oh, okay.
as many shows as we can find and that will entertain us. So if you can't find us, you might be able to find library or play to
There you
wins.
go. There you go. So, guys, if you're attending any of these conventions, be on the lookout.
There's so many good conventions.
So many, right?
Yes,
So many of them.
I wish I could just go to all of them.
So what are some of the challenges that you see as a game designer? And this is kind of wide open.
Mhm.
Um, in the in this coming year, in the next 4 years as a designer, I mean, we've got, you know, there's talks of trade wars and tariffs, and I know that's got everybody kind of that's a legitimate concern. Shipping
Yeah,
concerns, relationships, because we're a hobby that is almost exclusively made in China. So that's a real concern, whether any of that happens or not. But is there any like immediate or long term challenges you see coming to fruition in the future? Or
yeah. So in terms of like publishers, yeah,
yeah,
the tariffs and stuff are really concerning. So we have a great gamma organization, and they I know are partnered with some people and are going to bat with the powers that be to try to keep games as a tariff free import. And I know they're working pretty hard on that. So I really congratulate and applaud them for helping out the industry.
oh, good to know.
Yeah, we definitely rely largely on China for the manufacture of these games. We have been in talks with manufacturers in other locations, and it's just a matter of like what is their pricing like and what is their availability of like resources and bits. In China you can pretty much find everything. Some of the other places like they won't do dice or any plastics. Some of the places won't like have troubles with paper and won't do much with paper. So we've been looking around and keeping our eyes open. But I do think that's going to be a concern for all publishers as time goes on. But hopefully, board games that bring everybody happiness will remain a tariff and free import for
Right.
the foreseeable future. So we can hope on that, you know. Yeah. As far as like the game designer side of things, yeah, I don't know. There's there's a lot of days where I don't feel like I'm a real game designer because I'm self-publishing games, and I'm like, well, anybody can self-publish their own games. So I don't know how much of great advice I can put out there. Yeah, just know your audience, know who's who you're targeting, who you're playing for. Um, be aware of publishers that they have their own costs and things. Publishers aren't mean angry people that you see them to be. I've met a lot of great people in the publishing industry, and I know that their hearts go out to all the designers out there, and there's so many designers, and I think a lot of publishers would love to take in more games and more games and more games, but there's realistic physical limits to a shippable printable product that they can't do all the things. But I think if you have a good target for your audience, find the publishers that align the best with the target that you're going for, and don't get too downtrodden by like failed Kickstarters or rejections from publishers. Like, they don't hate you, they don't hate your game. And even if they do, there might be someone else out there that loves it.
That's awesome. I love that. That's great. So I'm a published author myself. I published a few books, and my first book, when I submitted it for publication, I got my first rejection letter from the publisher. I framed it and just hung it up on a wall like a badge of honor, right?
That's the right attitude, I think.
And it motivated me for a while. So that's really good advice. So what about we know there's a community of gamers.
Mm-hmm.
What about the community of publishers? So, and I have a reason for asking that question, because I want to know about if there is, if the community of publishers is close knit as the gamers community. And then if you have a designer, right, I put out a game and I come to you, if that community is close, and my game's not the right fit for last night games, but you're like, you need to think about John Doe at SNS Publishing, right? Like, so that's kind of where I'm really trying to get at, but I'm curious about the community of publishers as a whole.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm not saying like we're fully integrated. I'm not fully necessarily integrated in that publishing community, but from the part that we've been in, that we've experienced, I think the publishing community is a really great community, and I think the people are pretty tight knit. It's an interesting space. We aren't like, publishers aren't making something that you can only buy one of every 10 years. And so we're not like as competitive, I think, in that sense, as like most, competitors would be in any given industry. I have, from personal experience, from experience of designer friends and from designer publishers, absolutely, publishers will be like, hey, this doesn't really work for us. Have you tried? And they'll point you right to another publisher. And I don't know. I don't see like when someone comes out with a new game, it's like, oh, that's infringing, we have to compete against that. It's just like, we're just all making games, and there's like, it's a really, the number of people that play games is a really big pie, and we're all just like trying to make fun games that those people will enjoy. Yep. So I've sent people to other publishers for sure. Like when they come to my booth at the convention and they're showing me their game, I'll take a look at it, and if I have any inkling of like, oh, this publisher's doing that kind of game or something, I mean, there's certainly publishers that work more in like apparatuses and things. You've got like your Haba Amigo or Hasbro kind of space, or you've got like your heavier games, and then there's point people in that direction too. And there's, I think everybody out there is really just, I mean, everyone I've met is pretty nice and pretty helpful. And, will try to point you in the right direction if they possibly can.
Cool.
Um, I did hear recently from one of our local convention um, supporters. There was a person, I guess, that they had dealt with that designed a game and was of the opinion that and had shopped it around to a lot of different publishers, and it has not been accepted by any publisher. And this particular designer was of the opinion, well, all the publishers out there are stupid because this game is amazing. And I didn't witness any of this firsthand, but just remember that if you want the publishers to be nice people, also be a nice person yourself, and do respect if people don't want your game. And there's always opportunity to change it, advance it, and do take people's input. It's not to say take everyone's input,
Right.
but consider the input that you're given and decide whether or not you should act on it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite game mechanic?
I don't know. I think my brother would say that I really like the roll and writes, and so he'd probably tell everybody like Nate likes roll and writes. I know that's not strictly a mechanic.
Well, yeah.
It kind of is. But yeah, I do enjoy roll and writes. Trying to think of, I mean, I love like blueprints of Mad King Ludwig.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Next Station games, all those. I love those.
Yeah.
And I love Get On Board. I have the Paris
Sure.
Roma one. Love it.
Yeah.
So, we made horticulture. I love horticulture.
Is there a mechanic that you really that you have not yet designed a game using this mechanic, and you're looking forward to designing a game using said mechanic? I hope it didn't break you with that question.
You're like, no. Jake and I have a running joke that we've always tried to make a card game and always ended up making something else. So maybe someday we'll make a card game.
Galaxy Rush is a card game. I mean,
it is. It's
played on cards.
Yeah, it's played on cards. That was another attempt to make a card game. It is a card game, but it does have extra bits going on.
It's true.
I think I would like to incorporate trick taking. Jake hates trick taking.
Okay.
I'm going to put that out there.
Okay.
But I think I would like to try to do that someday. And I know it feels like maybe it's an overdone space, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just make something for my own. To say I've done it. That would be an interesting one to me.
So separate from last night games, more about you. My last question to you is, what are your top 3 favorite games within your collection today? Not of all time, like today, because our favorites change.
Yeah, no,
that's why
so true.
my caveat is, so today, what are your top 3 favorite games that's out there right now?
In my collection. See, that's interesting. So I actually had watched one of your watched a podcast. I watched your video a couple episodes ago where you had mentioned fromage.
Mm-hmm.
And this last weekend, my wife and I were able to go to this tiny little convention in Bryce, Utah, and it was there, and I played it, and
right,
I didn't think I was gonna like it. I know that's really judgmental. I was judging not that the art's bad. I just thought it was going to be heavier than I was ready for.
Okay.
And I quite enjoyed that, but it's not in my collection, so that doesn't count. Right now in my collection, I really like Tangram City.
Okay.
We played that one a little bit. That one's a pretty new one. That's a Uwe Rosenberg. I always say his name wrong, so sorry.
Yep.
That one's fun. The blueprints of Mad King Ludwig. That one we've got a lot of play. And I think I don't know. Maybe it's just because I played them so much, but I really like the Next Station games. We have Tokyo, London, and Paris, and
Yeah.
I think most recently I was playing Paris.
Yeah, Paris is pretty. They're all good. They're unique in their own
Good,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's no wrong answer.
No, I'm so nervous saying that because I'm like, wait. Then I think of another game. I'm like, oh wait.
So the reason why I like asking top three is I don't enjoy when someone's like, "So what's your favorite board game?" Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it? 5,000 titles came out in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And just in 2024, you want me to pick one
Yeah.
of all time? Come on.
I know.
I mean, any listener of our show, viewers now, they all know it's Obsession.
Right.
That's our favorite game. And I managed to squeeze it in to this episode. You know, Dan Halligan lives in Utah now.
Okay. That's cool.
He recently relocated to somewheres in Utah. He mentioned it in his interview with Gareth in episode 100. So go back and check that out. Go check that out for sure.
Knock them down.
Where can people find you and Jake Last Night Games on all the social medias and everything for those listening?
Pretty much Last Night Games all jammed together on all the platforms.
There you go. There it is. Got to keep it simple, right? You know, I think that I'm going to change the title of this episode to Red Feathers to Black Scales. I wrote that down during the show. I'm like, Red Feathers to Black Scales. That is an image that is going to stick with me throughout this conversation. So yeah. So Nathan, thank you so much for joining and, you know, giving us some insight into you and your brother's games, your company. What about the future? Any titles you can tell us about that we should be looking for?
So this one is a new one that we're taking to print right now. I don't think it's actually entered print, but it's called Mystic Manor. It's kind of an interesting game. It's a haunted house. You play young explorers going through the house, ridding it of the unwanted ghosts, apparitions, and imps. So, it has a little bit of that like crawl explore feel to it, but it's easy to learn. It's like the rest of our games.
I think that's the single attribute of all your games that has been consistent, and I think is the strength, is their accessibility to all players of all skill levels. I think that's great. So thanks again, guys, for watching, listening. As always, we love having you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave comments down below. Nathan will be able to see them. I'll see them. We'll respond to them accordingly. So thanks again, guys.